Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
With a degree in marketing, I was excited to start my new job in the big city. But as any recent grad knows, entry-level salaries don't go far when you're trying to afford rent in a decent area. That's how I ended up living with a roommate I found through an online listing. At first, everything seemed fine. We got along well enough, splitting chores and keeping to ourselves most of the time. But after a few months, things started to get weird. My roommate would come home with brand new furniture, expensive electronics, and designer clothes. When I asked about it, she'd always have some vague explanation about a great deal or a friend's discount. I should have known something was up, but I was too focused on my own life to pay much attention. That is, until the day she disappeared without a trace, leaving me with unpaid rent and a stack of overdue bills. It wasn't until the debt collectors started calling that I realized the full extent of what had happened. My roommate had been using our shared address to open credit accounts and make large purchases, then skipping out on the payments. And now somehow, they thought I was responsible for her debts. At first, I tried to explain the situation calmly. I told the debt collectors that I wasn't the person they were looking for, that my roommate had left, and that I had no idea where she'd gone. But they wouldn't listen. They kept insisting that since I was a woman living at the same address, I must be the same person. The calls became more frequent and more aggressive. I started to worry that this would affect my credit score and my future. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I did some research and found out which local furniture company my ex-roommate had scammed. I made up my mind to visit the owner in person and set things straight. When I arrived at the store, I asked to speak with the owner. The receptionist seemed hesitant, but after I explained that it was about an outstanding debt, she reluctantly led me to his office. The owner was a middle-aged man with a stern expression. As soon as I walked in, he started accusing me of being a thief and a liar. I took a deep breath and calmly explained the situation. I told him about my ex-roommate, how she had disappeared, and how I was being wrongly pursued for her debts. The owner didn't seem convinced. He kept insisting that I was responsible for the debt, threatening to take legal action if I didn't pay up. That's when I decided to play hardball. I informed him that if I received one more call from a debt collector about this issue, I would sue him for libel. I explained that I'd be happy to share any information I had about my ex-roommate, as she had left me with unpaid rent and bills too. I made it clear that I wanted to see the debt collectors pursue her as much as he did. But I didn't stop there. I told him that I had purchased a domain name similar to his store's website. It was almost identical, just one letter off. Then I warned him that if I had to spend any more time dealing with this situation, I'd use that website to post all about the legal case I would file regarding his attempts to defame me. The owner's face went pale. He started stammering, trying to backtrack on his earlier accusations. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he realized the potential damage this could do to his business. Suddenly, his tone changed completely. He apologized profusely for the misunderstanding and assured me that he would personally make sure the debt collectors stopped contacting me. He even offered me a discount on furniture as a gesture of goodwill, which I politely declined. The calls from debt collectors stopped completely, and thankfully, I never heard from my ex-roommate again. I was born with a rare genetic condition that gradually robbed me of my sight. By the time I turned 18, I was completely blind. It wasn't easy, but I learned to adapt. I got my guide dog, learned Braille, and even started college. Life was going okay until that fateful day at the mall. I needed to buy a gift for my mom's birthday, so I decided to brave the crowded shopping center. My guide dog was with me, as always, helping me navigate through the sea of people. As I was walking past the food court, I heard someone's voice getting louder and more aggressive. At first, I thought it wasn't directed at me, but then I felt a hand grab my arm roughly. The person, a woman with a shrill voice, started accusing me of faking being blind. She said I was just wearing dark glasses to get attention and special treatment. I tried to explain that I was genuinely blind and that my dog was a trained guide dog, not just a pet. But the woman wouldn't listen. She kept getting more agitated, her voice rising with each word. I could feel people starting to stare, and my anxiety was through the roof. Suddenly, I felt the woman's hand on my face. Before I could react, she snatched my sunglasses off. I heard a snap, and I knew she had broken them. I was in shock. Those glasses weren't just for show, they protected my sensitive eyes from light and helped me feel more comfortable in public. I started to panic. Without my glasses, I felt exposed and vulnerable. I could hear gasps from the people around us, but no one seemed to be stepping in to help. The woman continued her tirade, now saying that my eyes looked normal and that proved I was lying. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I heard a familiar voice. My mom. She had been shopping in a nearby store and came to see what the commotion was about. When she realized what was happening, she didn't hesitate. My mom's voice was cold and controlled as she addressed the woman. She explained who she was and demanded to know why the woman thought it was okay to assault a blind person. The woman tried to defend herself, but my mom wasn't having it. What happened next was so fast, I could barely process it. There was a loud smack followed by a thud. People around us gasped and started murmuring. Someone nearby explained to me that my mom had punched the woman so hard she fell to the ground, unconscious. Everything after that was a blur. Security came and the police were called. I gave my statement, still shaken from the whole ordeal. The woman was arrested for assault and destruction of property. My mom was let off with a warning, given the circumstances. In the days that followed, I received an outpouring of support from the community. A local optician offered to replace my sunglasses for free. The mall management apologized profusely and promised to implement better training for their staff to assist people with disabilities. As for the woman, I later found out she was charged and had to pay a hefty fine. She was also ordered to take sensitivity training and do community service at a center for the visually impaired. In the end, I'm grateful. Grateful for my mom, for the supportive community, and for the chance to turn this negative experience into something positive. I hope that by sharing my story, I can prevent something like this from happening to someone else, because no one should ever have to prove their disability to anyone. When I became the new principal at Oakwood Elementary, I was excited to make a difference in kids' lives and create a positive learning environment. Little did I know that one parent would turn my dream job into a nightmare. From day one, I noticed this mom who always hung around after drop-off. She'd corner teachers and brag about her son's talents. At first, I thought she was just a proud parent. But things took a turn when competition season rolled around. This mom came to my office one day. She started talking about how her son was the most gifted child in the whole school. Then she dropped a bombshell. She wanted me to make sure her son won every single competition. I was shocked. I tried to explain that competitions are meant to be fair, but she wouldn't listen. She kept insisting her son deserved to win everything. I stood my ground and told her that wasn't going to happen. She got angry and stormed out of my office. I thought that was the end of it, but I was so wrong. A few days later, I overheard some teachers talking. They said parents were complaining about this mom offering them money. She wanted them to convince their kids to lose on purpose. I couldn't believe it. I called a meeting with the staff to address the issue. We agreed to keep an eye out for any suspicious behavior. Things got even crazier after that. This mom showed up at a school assembly. She grabbed the microphone and started ranting about how her son should be crowned king of all competitions. The kids looked confused and the teachers were horrified. I had to step in and escort her out. She was yelling the whole time about how unfair we all were. I thought that would be the wake-up call she needed, but it only made her more determined. The next day, I arrived at school to find a group of parents protesting outside. They were holding signs saying things like, "Fair competitions for all," and "No more rigged games." I later found out this mom had manipulated some parents into thinking we were the ones cheating. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. Local news vans started showing up at the school. Reporters were asking about corruption and unfair practices. I was baffled until I got a call from a journalist. She told me someone had hired a PR firm to spread negative stories about our school. I knew I had to take action. I called an emergency meeting with the school board and explained everything. They were shocked but supportive. We decided to hold a town hall meeting to address the concerns and clear the air. The night of the town hall, the auditorium was packed. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. I laid out everything that had happened, from the initial demand to rigged competitions to the smear campaign. As I spoke, I could see the realization dawning on people's faces. Then something unexpected happened. The mom's son stood up. He looked embarrassed as he started talking. He told everyone how his mom had been pushing him to win at all costs. He said he just wanted to have fun and make friends like other kids. The room fell silent. The mom tried to interrupt, but other parents shushed her. One by one, people started sharing stories about how she had tried to bribe or pressure them. It was like a dam had broken. By the end of the night, the truth was out. The protesting parents apologized for being misled. The PR firm, when confronted, admitted they had been hired under false pretenses and dropped the campaign. The local news ran a story about how our school community came together to stand up against bullying and unfair practices. As for the mom, she didn't show her face at school for a while after that. When she did come back, she was much quieter. Her son seemed happier too, finally able to just be a kid. My husband and I were both in our early 30s, focused on our careers, and decided not to have kids. Don't get me wrong, we like children, but they just weren't in our plans. Everything was great until the family next door moved in about 6 months ago. A couple with 5 kids, all under the age of 10. At first, we tried to be friendly neighbors. We'd wave hello, make small talk when we saw them outside, that sort of thing. But things took a turn for the worse pretty quickly. One Saturday morning, I was enjoying my coffee and planning a relaxing day off when I heard frantic knocking at the door. I opened it to find my neighbor standing there with all 5 of her children. Without even waiting for me to say anything, she started explaining that she had an emergency at work and needed someone to watch her kids. I was taken aback and tried to politely decline, explaining that I wasn't prepared to watch 5 children on such short notice. But she wouldn't take no for an answer. She kept insisting, saying it would only be for a few hours and that I didn't have anything better to do anyway, since I didn't have kids of my own. Before I could protest further, she practically shoved her children into my house and rushed off, shouting a quick thanks over her shoulder. I stood there stunned with 5 unfamiliar kids looking up at me expectantly. Not knowing what else to do, I spent the day trying to keep them entertained and out of trouble. It was exhausting, to say the least. When their mother finally came to pick them up late in the evening, she acted like it was no big deal. She casually mentioned that she might need my help again soon and left without so much as a thank you. This became a pattern over the next few weeks. She'd show up unannounced, sometimes even on weekdays when I was working from home, and expect me to drop everything to watch her kids. Each time I tried to explain that I couldn't keep doing this, but she'd guilt-trip me, saying things like how hard it was being a working mother and how I couldn't understand since I didn't have kids. After about a month of this, I'd had enough. The next time she showed up at my door with her brood, I stood my ground. I firmly told her that I couldn't watch her children anymore. I explained that I had my own work and responsibilities, and that while I sympathized with her situation, I wasn't a free babysitting service. She didn't take it well. She started yelling, calling me selfish and heartless. She claimed that as a neighbor, it was my duty to help her out, especially since I didn't have the burden of children myself. I stayed calm but insisted that she needed to find other childcare arrangements. Eventually, she stormed off with her kids, but not before threatening that I'd regret this. I thought that would be the end of it. How wrong I was. A few weeks later, I received a notice that I was being sued. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read the details. My neighbor was suing me for emotional damages and demanding compensation for missed career opportunities. Her claim stated that because I had suddenly refused to provide childcare, she had been forced to miss work, potentially jeopardizing her career. The lawsuit went on to argue that as a childless couple, My husband and I had a moral obligation to assist parents in our community. She even had the audacity to claim that we owed her free childcare because we didn't understand the challenges of parenthood. I was furious and scared. I had never imagined that trying to be a good neighbor could land me in legal trouble. My husband and I immediately sought legal counsel. Our lawyer assured us that the case had no merit, but warned that it could still be a long and stressful process. As word of the lawsuit spread through our neighborhood, we were surprised by the reaction. Many of our neighbors, including those with children, rallied around us. They shared their own stories of entitled behavior from this woman and offered to testify on our behalf if needed. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. But as soon as the judge heard the details of the case, it was clear she wasn't buying it. She questioned my neighbor about her child care arrangements before moving to our neighborhood and why she felt entitled to free babysitting from strangers. My neighbor's responses were a mix of entitlement and desperation. She argued that in her previous neighborhood, there had been a community of stay-at-home moms who all helped each other out. She claimed she was shocked to find that our neighborhood didn't operate the same way and that she felt discriminated against as a working mother. The judge wasn't impressed. She dismissed the case, stating that neighbors have no legal obligation to provide free childcare and that my neighbor's claims were baseless and a waste of the court's time. She even warned my neighbor about potential consequences for filing frivolous lawsuits. The lawsuit was over, but the stress and tension it had caused wouldn't disappear overnight. My neighbor avoided eye contact as she hurried away. In the weeks that followed, things in the neighborhood changed. My neighbor became much less visible, presumably embarrassed by the whole ordeal. Other neighbors who had been hesitant to speak up before shared that they too had been pressured into babysitting or other favors. I heard that my entitled neighbor had finally enrolled her kids in proper daycare and after-school programs. It seemed the judge's stern words had finally made her realize that her behavior was unacceptable. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.